Alright, in this video we are going to learn about the File tab in Word, up here in the top left, as well as indentations and tab stops within the ruler. So you'll notice already when I click on the File tab it brings in a whole different menu, and it wasn't like that in the past in older versions of Word, but now it brings up a few different options, and I just want to show you a couple of them. So if you click on the File tab, like I just did, there's this one option here that says Protect Document, and you can encrypt it with a password. And I'd highly suggest this if you're ever going to email somebody a document that has, sensitive information in it, an account number or anything, passwords, anything like that. At minimum, I would encrypt it. So that way, if somehow it gets into the hands of somebody else, they would at least need to know the password. So in the past, when I bought a house, I sent PDFs and Word documents to the bank because they asked for a bunch of information online, and I encrypted it all with the password, and then I called the bank and gave them the password over the phone. So obviously don't put the password in the email as well. So you'll be doing that in the assignment this week. You'll encrypt it with a password, and you'll just type the password in that you want. So let's say the password is guitar. And it will ask you to re-enter the password to make sure you spelled it right the first time. And then that's it. At that point, when you close the document, the next time you reopen it, let's try it. I'll save. The next time you reopen the document, I will File, Open. Before it opens, it's going to ask you for that password. And then it will allow you to open it. So you better remember the password. Now that you've done that, you can resave it without the password. And the way you do that is you don't delete, you don't tell it that it doesn't need a password. You just actually delete the password, press OK, and now it's not encrypted with the password anymore. Another option in the File tab is obviously the Print button. I just wanted to show you a couple things in here. So if you were to print, this is the one button I want to show you in here is you can actually print multiple pages per sheet. This will become more important when we get to Excel, but I'm not going to go over too many print settings. Also, under the Options button, there is a bunch of different general options. So some of the things you can put in here, you can actually have a background color instead of just a white background in all your documents. You can put different things. And they have lots of different options in here. But the one I find the most useful within Word options is the Save category. The default for Word to save files is every 10 minutes. You might have seen that before, automatically saves. Why not turn that into 2 minutes or even 1 minute? Every time it auto-saves, it will show you that little hourglass or that thinking icon, so you might have to let it do its thing so it can. But I'd let it auto-save more often than it does. 10 minutes is a lot of work to miss, so I should set that myself to every 2 minutes. Alright, so that's it for the file. You can scroll through the other options, but I just wanted to show you that. Actually, there is a couple other things, sorry. A lot of times you need to save files as a PDF, and so you can convert them over to PDFs essentially. The way I usually do that is I press the Save As. You can do either buttons here, but if you press Save As, under the Save As type, you can choose a PDF. Okay. You can also choose older editions of Word. That way, maybe if you're going to open this up on a computer that has an older version of Word, it'll allow you to still open it. If you create a 2016 or 2019 version of a Word file, and you go and try to open it on an older version, it may not open. So you can save it as older versions, and then you can save them as PDFs, which you will also do in one of the assignments this week. All right, so that's it for the File tab. Now I want to show you a couple things with these tab markings up here in the ruler. Now I noticed my document looks a little strange. There's this gray line right here. If this happens to you, scroll up, you'll probably see something in that area, and I notice a comment from before. If you recall, that'll be in the Review tab, and right now it's showing the markups. I'm going to just don't show any markups. So if there's something on the right side of the page, you can ignore it or hide it in the Review tab. All right, so back to the tab stops. This is a really important thing that most people don't know about, and it'll help you in the future if you ever have to edit a file. Up here, there's this little shape. I call it the hourglass. It looks like an hourglass symbol. There's actually 3 buttons on there. There's the top triangle, the bottom triangle, and the little rectangle. So those are all actually separate buttons. And you have to be really careful when you click on it because they're small. So let me show you what each one does. So for instance, in this paragraph right here, you'll notice in a paragraph, when you indent the first time, it will automatically space over a 1/2 inch. But if you don't want a 1/2 inch, that's what this top triangle does. This top triangle is the first line of the paragraph indentation spacing. So you can have it spaced over all the way to 2 inches if you wanted. All right. The next one, if you click down here, is how much spacing you want the paragraph to be tabbed over by. So if you grab the top triangle, or sorry, the triangle that's called the hanging indent triangle, you'll notice it is independent of this top triangle right here. So you have to be real careful what you grab. This is the way to space over an entire paragraph. So you'll notice I can actually space the paragraph over independent from the top line. Now the bottom rectangle, if you grab that, it does them both at the same time. All right. Also, you'll notice in this ruler up here, and by the way, you need the ruler on in order to see this stuff. So that was under the View tab in the previous video. You have to turn the ruler on to see this. Should have said that earlier. But you also see these dark gray areas, and those are the margins. So right now my margins are really, they're only a 1/2 inch. So if I were to print this, there'd be a 1/2 inch spacing around the edges. And even along the top edge, I have a 1/2 inch. And so you'll see a ruler on the left as well with the gray area. So you can change your margins right there if you want. Sometimes this hourglass gets in the way, so you can move it over and then change the margin. So you can create more spacing for the entire document on the edges. Maybe you want to hole punch this and you don't want the words to be in the way, or you need more margin for what you're doing. So I usually leave mine as narrow, so that way I have more space. Same thing on the right side. You can make the margins wider or less. And these numbers up here actually do represent physical inches. So from here, from 1 to 2 is an entire inch. So you can use this. Now when you zoom in, you'll notice I'm holding Control and using the wheel on my mouse to zoom in. You'll notice those get bigger. So on your screen, they're not physical inches, obviously, because you can zoom in on them. But when you print it, that's the scale you'll use. So you can use that ruler as an actual guide when you're trying to make something a specific size. All right, so that those are the indent markers and icons. There are another set that are equally important. If I scroll down, they are called tab stops, and that might be a button you've never even known about before. Right here in this top left corner, there's a little button, and that is a left tab stop. I call it like a bookend because it looks like, you know, if you have a bookshelf, you'd put a bookend on the left. If you click this button, then you have a bookend that's kind of separates, it's in the middle. And if you press it again, now you have a right bookend. So you can change between, and there's actually others too we'll talk about. You can add indentation markers, but we're going to add some of these bookends. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So let's suppose every time you press tab, you'll notice it moves over half an inch, half an inch, half an inch, half an inch. Well, what if you want it to move over to exactly the 2, and this is 5/8. Let's say 2 1/4. You don't want it to go to a half an inch. We want it to go to 1 1/4 inch space. So what you can do is you'll click this button until you get this left tab, or the left bookend as I call it, and then you just click right on the ruler, and there you'll see it appear on the ruler. Now when you press tab, it'll space over to that exact spot. It'll line up with that tab. If I add another one, say right here, and then I click on a different word and press tab, it's going to ignore the half-inch default rules and will tab over to wherever you see those tab stops. Now if I press on another word and press tab, it'll go back to every half inch. All right. So we'll practice with this in a minute. Sometimes you put one of these tab stops in by accident, and to get rid of it, all you do is click on it and drag it off the ruler, and it'll be gone. So I can remove these by doing that. Now, sometimes you want to tab over an entire paragraph, maybe, you know, this paragraph right here. So you'll notice if I click on the first line and add a left tab stop right here, if I go to a different part of the document, let's say I click down here, you'll notice that tab stop disappeared. So the tab stop is here, but when I click somewhere else, the tab stop disappears. So every paragraph has its own set of tab stops. So if you want to have the same tab stop, you know, at the 1 1/2 inch mark for the entire document, you'll need to highlight the entire document and then add the tab stop. Otherwise, it will only be for the paragraph that your mouse is currently in, where your cursor is currently clicked on. All right, so that's pretty simple. You know, it's just a way to override the tabs, the half-inch tab stops. Let me show you where it becomes real useful. Let's say you have, let's type in a couple words here. Let's say we have the price of some cars. So let's say a Mustang, Corvette, and a, I don't know, Chevy. Wait, that is a Corvette. Honda, whatever. Okay, you'll notice they all line up on the left. Let's say we want to make those all line up at the 2 1/4 inch mark. So you'll notice again, I had my cursor on Mustang and I used my left bookend, and so now when I tab over, it'll go to that spot, but the Corvette won't, because there's no, it'll skip right over that. So again, you'll have to highlight all of the lines or paragraphs that you want the bookend or the tab stop to be in, and then it will appear in all of those lines. So there we go. Now, that's just half of the story. The other half of the story is, well, what if you want to line up on the right side some words? So let's say the price of a Mustang is $30,000. All right, and a Corvette, let's just say it's $50,000, and a Honda is, let's say, $21,450. Now, you'll notice by default, when you press tab, they line up on the left. They are left justified. But a lot of times you want them to line up, you want the end of the word to line up on the right. In the Home tab, you'll see some of these buttons right here. You can align the document to the left, you can align the document to the right, but sometimes you want to align it to the left and to the right within the same line. So what you do, again, we're going to create a right bookend. So you're going to click this button until you see the right tab. And we're going to click on the 4 1/4 inch mark. All right, and again, I did not have these two lines highlighted, so I'll have to do those as well. And let me show you what's going on right now. I had originally put a tabs in there. So what this right side does is it aligns the right side of the word to stop right at that point. So the next time you put a tab, it'll line up right there. And so I tab these over, and you'll notice that the right side of the word lines up with the right bookend. And this is why I call them bookends, because if these were books, they would line up flush with that side of the tab. Let's say I put another bookend, another tab stop right there. Again, if I click on the, oops, I was in this line. If I tab this over, it's going to line it up with the right. If I change the tab stop back to the left and I tab this over, every one of these tab stops is where the tab is going to stop at. There's another one that looked like a T, that one right here. If I put that, say, at the 6 1/4 inch mark and I press tab, it's going to center the word right on the middle of that tab stop. So sometimes you want it justified to the left, sometimes you want it justified to the right, sometimes you want it right in the middle. All right, and again, to get rid of them, you just click on them and drag them off. Now, one of the other things you might want to do is put what they call a leader. A leader is one of these, where it's leading from one word to the other. Now, you do not want to type it in the way I just did, because what happens if I press tab and the word gets scooted over? I'll have to go back in here and keep typing in more dots. So that's not the way you want to create a leader. Again, these dots are called a leader. So what we're going to do is we're going to highlight these words, and this is an option that's kind of hidden. It's going to be under the paragraph group in the Home tab, and you'll have to click on this drop-down paragraph settings button, bottom right. Okay, and in the bottom of this window, you'll see a button that says Tabs. So click that, and you'll notice there it says there's a tab stop at the 2 1/4 inch mark, which is referring to this one right here. And there's another tab stop at the 4 1/4 inch mark right there. So if we want to put a leader, you'll see this word leader right here. You'll click on the second one, the 4 1/4 inch mark, and you'll say what type of leader do you want. Do you want it to be dashes or dots or just underline? And press OK. And there they are. There's your leader. If I go back and try it again, let me show you one of the things that people mess up on is they might click on the very first tab stop. If you click on the first tab stop and put the leader in, let me show you what happens. It puts the dots before the word. So whatever leader you choose or whatever tab stop you choose, whether you click on the first or second one, it's going to put the dots before that number all the way up to when it sees a word or other text, it will stop. So those are leaders. Now this would be a great place for you to pause the video and actually practice some of these, because a lot of these make sense when you're watching it, but then you forget how to do it. So go ahead and pause the video and try it out. All right. Let me show you another way to use these tab stops. Let's say you have money and you want to line up the decimal point. So let's say you have $245.01. You have $1,200 or $12,000.05. And let's pretend you're a gas station and the price of gas is $3.99. Actually, they always put the extra 9 in there to get another penny out of you for each gallon. We can line these up on the left. We could line them up on the right. Let's try that. If we add the right tab stop, let's put it in, say right here. If I press tab, each of these will line up on the right. But sometimes you want to line them up so all of the decimals are in line. And so if you click on this button, you'll eventually see a T. It's called the decimal tab stop. You'll see a T or an upside down T with a dot. That's the one we're going to use. So let's put that right at the 3 1/8 inch mark. Now if we tab over, oops, undo. I have to put it for all 3 of these. I always forget that. So now I'll put it, there we go. So now when I tab these over, you'll see how the decimals are all lined up with that tab stop. And these, if you see these are those leaders. We can go back in here and delete those leaders. You can't, that's the problem. You can't just highlight them and press delete because they're kind of part of the background. They're not actual dots, they're leaders. So you have to go into the paragraph settings, press tabs, and remove the leader. If we click on these, we'll see we had a leader right here before that 2 1/4 inch. And so that's how you can delete it. So you can line up decimal points as well. The last thing for this video is inserting hyperlinks real quickly. This should be a piece of cake. If you want to make a word a hyperlink, you highlight the word, you right click, and there's a hyperlink option right there. And hyperlinks are pretty cool in Word because you can have them open up folders, you can have them open up files, you can have them open up, say, www.google.com. You can have them, when you click on them, jump to another place in the document, all sorts of things. And so oops, where to go? So if I press OK, it'll make it blue. And when you hover your mouse over it, it'll tell you where it's taking you. One of the things you might want to do is modify what it says in that little comment box you see right here. So let's highlight that word and make a hyperlink out of it again, or edit the hyperlink. And there's this button right here that says screen tip. And so this will take you to Google. So that way the person knows what the link is about. So now when I put my mouse over it, it'll say something different than the default. The default is to say what website it's going to, but you can trick somebody and put any website in there that you want, but it'll take them to where the actual hyperlink was. And so you have to hold Control, and it should open it up at that point. That's it for this video.